So we will see how timings work on machines today. Okay. How the timings are taken care of in our systems. So the topic today is timings, where we learn about how system generates timing and synchronizes things in our system, synchronizes the action in our system with respect to time. How the system synchronizes action taken by the operating system and the connected devices to your machine. So the primary objective of the timing mechanism is synchronization. Our real world drivers that we use, all our real world drivers need to do some more than implement the operations that control the device. Okay, our operating systems have to deal with the stuff like memory management, have to deal with stuff like timing, have to deal with stuff like hardware access, things like this. So to work on these things, what is important is we need some additional tools. So till now in your device driver, what have you implemented? You have implemented I/O. In your device driver, you have also implemented synchronization. In your device drivers, you have implemented some control operations like IOCTL proc. Now it's time to move beyond those things. The three next steps that we have to take as far as device driver development is concerned is that we have to deal with timing, where the device and the machine to which to connect to the device both work in synchronism. You have to take care of memory management and memory management related issues, and we also have to learn to have access to the original hardware access. These are the three next steps. We will start with timings. Timing deals with four important things. One is measuring time lapses and comparing timings. Now what is this measuring time lapses? Let us have a look at this. Yeah. When we talk about measuring time lapses, what exactly do we mean? What are we going to measure here? Well, suppose you have two machines interacting with each other. This is machine 1 on which you have connected a device 1. So machine 1 is going to communicate with device 1. On machine 1, this is how you define a bit. Okay. And on machine 2, on the device rather, this is how you define a bit. So you see, the timing with respect to a definition of a particular bit is different on a device and on the machine. Wherein you see the device may supply a bit, but the machine may see this as 2 1s. So you do not have any synchronization with respect to bit recognition. There is no synchronization between the machine and the device. So this is what I mean when I say synchronizing with respect to time. That is, bit recognition time must be same. On both the machines. This is what is the thing that is has to be taken care of with respect to timing. Another is knowing the current time. Now, what is current time with respect to humans and with respect to machine? Current time. When we talk about humans, current time is wall clock time. Where you have hour, minutes, seconds. But as far as machines are concerned, this is not the correct time. The correct time is calculated as duration, since system boot. Okay, like for us, the time is measured with a reference date from some date, say 00 AD BC. From then the time is being calculated. But as far as machines are concerned, the reference from where the time is concerned is calculated. That reference is nothing but the time when the system booted. It is only from that time that the reference is taken, and nothing more than that. Then, delaying operations for a specified amount of time. Now, sometimes it is possible that device D1 and device D2 are talking to each other, communicating with each other, and then during communication what happens is device 1 is slower and the device 2 is faster, and the device 2 is sending data to device 1, and device 1 is slower. So the device 2 faster device will swamp the slower device with lot of information, and device 1 will not be able to process and hold that information. So therefore the faster device has to be slowed down to the level of the device 1, so that both the device work at the same speed. So this is called delaying operations for a specified amount of time, so that both the devices can process the information at the same time. Another is scheduling a synchronous function to happen at a later time. Sometimes what happens, you want to schedule some work, okay? You want to start some work, like you start a thread function, or you start any other function. But what happens, the moment a thread function is created, it's immediately executes. The moment a function is called, it immediately executes. Suppose you don't want to execute your function at the same time, immediately. You don't want to start a thread function to start immediately. You created a thread function, fine, but you don't want it to start immediately. You want that thread function to be delayed for some time, and it will start later in time. It has been invoked, fine, but it will start later in some time. Some function has been called, but that function will start later in some time in future. So in this case, this is how you will work. So what you need to know is how to delay the operation. Now when I say delay, scheduling a synchronous function to happen at a later time. Now when I talk about this later time, what is this later time and how is this later time described? This later time is actually described with respect to some time in future, or maybe it could be either some time in future or some duration from current duration. So say the later time is, this is current time, okay, C, time current. Then you go to the future, then here you fix. This is fixed later time, okay. You can say, okay, add X hour, or you can have from the current time you specify some duration, okay. So the later time could be specified in two ways: fixed time in future, that the function has been called but the function will run at a fixed time in future, or you can say the function has been called but the function will execute after a certain duration. So these are the two ways that you specify the later time, okay, when the function will execute, right? Now in our machine we have a mechanism through which some continuous train of pulses come, and this mechanism is implemented through your timer interrupts. Inside our machine, inside our system, you have something called timer interrupts. These timer interrupts will specify the amount of the timer interrupts will specify the train of pulses that will come from the machine. For example, have a look at this diagram. Inside our system, we have some timing hardware. inside your system you will have timing hardware. Now this timing hardware that you see, this timing hardware will generate continuous train of pulses at a regular interval. Now this train of pulses at a regular interval are given by timing hardware. Okay. This timing hardware that you see, this timing hardware will generate train of pulses since the system boot. Now this timing hardware will be enabled at system boot. Okay, and initialized to 0. Now this timing hardware, the moment the system boots, immediately it starts giving you train of pulses. Okay, train of pulses. Now these train of pulses are counted and the count is stored in a register called Jiffy's counter. There is a register called Jiffy's counter, which is a 64-bit register. Even on 32-bit machines, this register is a 64-bit register. This 64-bit register will maintain the count of number of pulses that has come since the system boot. Okay, every particular pulse is called a jiffy, and this is defined as a duration. Now look at yourself. Ever since you were born, right from your childhood, okay, till today, you have been given an impression of duration. You know, duration means second. When somebody says second or minute, immediately in your mind you make a calculation. Okay, this much time. Okay. So if I say 1 second, okay, you know how much time, how much duration. If I say 1 minute, you know how much duration. So you have this idea of time with respect to seconds, minutes, because you believe in wall clock time. Whereas as far as system is concerned, the idea of duration is in terms of jiffys. Our systems, our machines on which we work does not understand seconds, milliseconds, nanoseconds, microseconds, picoseconds. It does not believe in that. It has no idea about seconds. What are you talking about seconds? No system knows about seconds. It is just a software that provides you information of duration with respect to seconds. What system knows is jiffy. This is the smallest unit of time known by your machine. Duration of one pulse that is generated from timing hardware is called a jiffy. Now whether you are working on a 1.8 megahertz crystal processor or 2.4 megahertz processor or 1 gigahertz processor, that is processor speed. Okay. Like you buy a Rado watch or you buy a Timex watch, whatever watch you buy, the duration of second is constant, isn't it? Whether you buy a cheap 50 rupees watch or you buy a 50,000 rupees watch, the duration of second is same. Similarly, whether you buy a ARM or you buy a i5 or i7 or i8, whatever you buy, the duration of time is always constant. Okay. The duration of jiffy is always constant. Whatever processor you buy, the duration of jiffy will be constant in that. It's a time constant. And the time constant is defined by one pulse generated by timing hardware. This one pulse is called 1 jiffy, and these train of pulses that come from the timing hardware are actually called timer interrupts. These are timing interrupts. Okay. Now, hertz. So everybody knows hertz is a unit of frequency. Well, that's right. Hertz is a unit of frequency when you talk about sines. not about technology. When you talk about technology, hertz is not unit of frequency. Hertz is a constant. Okay, is an architecture dependent value defined in Linux param.h. When you go to Linux param.h, there you will find the hertz defined as a constant. Let's see that. What is the value of hertz? It's an important value. We have all the headers here, and here we'll go to param.h. No, we don't have it in Linux. We may have it in ASM. Yes, here it is. Here you see, hertz is defined as a value that is configured, and the configured value of hertz that you get is 100. Some user interfaces are clocks per second. So you get these many clocks per second. Hertz is the number of clocks per second. Okay. So hertz is a constant that is defined in our machine. It is not a unit of frequency anymore. It is unit of frequency when you talk in terms of science, but in terms of technology, in terms of Linux, hertz is a constant which is defined at system boot. Okay. So now there is a counter. As I told you, there is a register called Jiffy's counter. That register is a 64-bit register which is initialized to 0 at system boot. So the number of interrupts that are generated by the timing hardware are counted by a register called Jiffy's counter. By a register called Jiffy's counter. Okay. This is causing some problem. Got stuck. Now look at this. You will have a system. Inside your system you will have a timing hardware which will generate interrupts at regular interval, and these interrupts are called timer interrupts. Inside your machine, inside your processor, you will have a counter, okay, and this counter will be called internal Jiffy's counter, called Jiffy's _ 64. So the name of the counter is Jiffy's _ 64. And this Jiffy's _ 64 is a 64-bit register which always maintains the count of the machine timer interrupts. It keeps on incrementing with every timer interrupt. When the system boots, it is initialized to 0 at system boot. So it is initialized to 0. Every time a timer interrupt happens, this Jiffy's _ 64-bit register keeps on incrementing until eternity, until the system is shut down. Okay. So there is a keyword called Jiffy's which is defined in C and system programming, which reads this Jiffy's _ 64-bit counter, and you can store the return value as an unsigned long, and it returns unsigned long, which is the count of the number of interrupts elapsed since the system boot, which are maintained in the GFEES underscore 64-bit counter. Now let me show you something interesting here, how it works. Some adjustments because we are using it for the first time today. See here, whatever I say is also comes as a text. I spoke this. So whatever I speak comes as a text. See, I am speaking, and you can see the captions below for everything I have spoken, right? Okay, what I was about to show you, I was about to show you something interesting here. Look at this. Go to /proc. Inside /proc, you will find a file called interrupts. Let us do long listing and see the size of the interrupts file. The size of the interrupts file is 0. If you recall from our previous sessions, I told you how the proc works when you open an entry inside the proc file system, then how it generates data on the run. So these interrupts will also refer to some callback functions and generate data for interrupts file. Let us open this interrupts file. Cat interrupts. This one. Cat. There you see. When I open this interrupts file, then it opens and shows you some interesting data. Let me do it once again and again. You see this. Okay, I am doing cat again. Now when I did cat, then you see this line, local timer interrupts. So this is a 8-core processor. There are 8 CPUs in my machine. So see, every core have a timing hardware, and from every core the continuous train of timer interrupts are coming. Okay, 67,79,272 local timer interrupts have come from core 8. 45 lakh, 45 lakh, 46 lakh, 61 lakh, 44 lakh, 44 lakh, 45 lakh timer interrupts have come from all the different cores till now. This 45 lakh 31,755. I do cat again, so it is 45 lakh 65,623. Now it is 69,108. Now it is 45 lakh 72,091, 75,418, 77,508, 79,746. So you see, the large amount of timer interrupts are coming, and coming so frequently. So continuous train of timer interrupts are coming from all the different cores of the CPU, local timer interrupts. Okay. This is what I am talking about in here. And every time a timer interrupt comes, there is a register called GFEES underscore 64, which counts the local timer interrupt, and you have this register 1 per core. So there are 8 GFEES counter registers in my processor because there are 8 cores. All the GFEES counter registers are maintaining their own local timer interrupts generated by the timing hardware in your machine. And this is the measure of time in your machines. Okay. Now there is a keyword called GFEES. When you use the keyword GFEES, then it reads the local timer interrupt register on the current core and returns its value, which is stored as an unsigned long variable, and you can read it. Okay. There I give you an assignment. As in, what you have to do is, you have implemented your read or write operations. In your read or write operations that you have implemented, you will use J1 is equal to GFEES right in the beginning of your read-write operations. and then you will do J2 is equal to GFees at the end of your read-write operations. Then the difference in J1 and J2 will give you the delay, that how much time your read or write operation is taking. Suppose this is your write operation function that you implemented. You do J1 is equal to GFees. Then you have your writer routine written here. Then you do J2 is equal to GFees. Then J1 and J2 will give you the duration. So the actual difference will be J2 minus J1 will give you the difference. So you can find the duration taken by your write routine and your read routine to perform IO that you want to do. So this will be the measure of how efficient your routine is. So your assignment is, you will tell me what is the duration in GFees for your write operation and your read operation for both. You have to tell me before tomorrow's class. Okay. Then there are macros. See, when you do this J is equal to J2 minus J1, if you do it like this, then what will happen is this will cause problem. This will cause problem because it will involve ALU and the calculation will be slightly difficult and more time consuming. So what you have to do is you have to make this faster. To make this operation happen fast, you will not do it like this. Instead, you will be using these macros. Time after, time before, time after equal to, time before equal to. These are the 4 macros which are made available to you to find the difference between the 2 timestamps. You will use time after when A is after B. You will do time before when A is before B. Time after equal to where A is before or equal to B. Time before equal to when A is before or equal to B. So either of the 4 macros could be used to find the difference between these 2 timestamps to calculate the duration in GFees for you. Okay? Right? So don't use this arithmetic expression, it will involve ALU. Instead, do it using either of the 4 macros. You will find it in the documents as well. And you find the duration and then give me the duration, that what is the duration in which your read or write routine is being implemented in device drivers. So that is your assignment for today. Okay. Then you will get the delay, and you will get the delay in time in terms of GFees. But we humans are not very comfortable with respect to time in GFees. Suppose I ask you one day, okay, please tell me what is the time. You ask me, sir, what is time? I say time is 79,374 GFees. I mean, you will not understand this, you will get confused. So you have to have understanding about wall clock time. You want the duration to be specified in wall clock time. You don't want the duration to be specified in GFees as far as you are concerned. Okay, machines deal in GFees, that's fine, but you don't want to deal in GFees. You want to deal in wall clock time. So what do? This. You have time in GFees, you want to convert to wall clock time, so you'll use GFees to timestamp. This GFees to timestamp will convert the time from GFees to wall clock time. Okay, it will convert the time in struct time spec. Time spec is here, which will give you time in seconds and nanoseconds. So GFees will be converted to seconds and nanoseconds. Another is GFees to time eval, which will convert the time to seconds and microseconds. Nanoseconds or microsecond, what precision you want, accordingly you can use GFees to time spec and GFees to time eval. You will be surprised to know that the same type of conversion happen for every time related thing that you do in your machine. Every. Okay. So you will give me time duration with respect to seconds or microseconds or seconds or nanoseconds. but the calculation will be done in jiffys and then converted to seconds or microseconds or nanoseconds, and then you will give me, sir, my duration is this many jiffys and this many seconds, nanoseconds. This you will be able to find in time.h. As far as the jiffys keyword is concerned, these 4 macros are concerned, you will be able to find it in jiffys.h. Notice these header files. Okay. To access the jiffys underscore 64-bit register directly on 32-bit machines, you have this system call get underscore jiffys underscore 64. You can use the system call directly to read the value of local timer interrupts on the current core of the CPU, which will return unsigned 64-bit values. Okay. Now look at this formula. I told you that hertz is a constant. So how is the constant derived? Slash proc slash interrupts divided by slash proc slash uptime will give you the value of hertz. Okay. So slash proc slash interrupts, when you go and see slash proc slash interrupts, you will see current value of interrupts is like 49,38,770. Okay. And when you see uptime, it gives you uptime as 12,401. So if you divide this by this and this by this, it gives you 2 values of hertz. This for the current core and this for the whole processor. Okay. So this is how you calculate the value of hertz for your machine at any given time. Okay. Now, to obtain high resolution timing, what do you do? That we'll see in a moment. Hold on. There are a few more registers other than jiffys underscore 64 that I would like to introduce you to. One such register, which is inside the processor control unit, is called timestamp counter register. Okay. It was introduced by Pentium, but now used in almost all kind of processors. Readable from both kernel space and user space directly. This timestamp counter counts the CPU cycles, not the local timer interrupts. Local timer interrupts are counted and the count is stored in a variable called jiffys underscore 64. Whereas this timestamp counter register reads the CPU cycles. CPU cycles, remember, gives you the CPU speed, 1.8 GHz processor or 1 GHz processor or 2.4 GHz processor. So the CPU cycle rate varies, whereas the jiffys, the local timer interrupt rate is constant. There are differences between these two. So this timestamp counter register copies the CPU, counts the CPU cycle, whereas jiffys underscore 64-bit register counts the local time interrupts. So you have 3 different type of calls to read the CPU cycle counter. Okay. All the macros that are used to read the timestamp counter register, these macros are defined in a header file called MSR. MSR machine means machine specific register .h, where you have 2 calls. One is RDTSC, read timestamp counter, okay, on a 32-bit variable. So the 64-bit register is a timestamp counter is a 64-bit register. Out of these 64-bit registers, the lower 32 will and the upper 32 bit will come here and here. Or if you are using 32-bit machine, then you use RDTSC-L, where only lower 32 bits of the timestamp counter register will be copied and copied in this lower 32 bit. Or if you are using 64-bit machine, you will use RDTSC-LL, where the 64-bit register count will be stored here. If you want to be compatible to both 32-bit and 64-bit machine, then you use RDTSC, where the lower 32 and the upper 32 bit will come here and here. Okay. So this is how it works. So assignment number 2, you will find the delay incurred in doing read or write operation in your machine with respect to CPU cycles. Two type of delays you have to find out. One is the delay in GPUs. Another is the delay in CPU cycles. Two type of delays you have to find in your machine, in your device driver, that how efficient is your device driver with respect to IO operations. Okay, and you have to tell me these readings tomorrow. Okay. Then there are other processor specific registers that are used in your machine, and these processor specific registers are this. Sorry, wait. Okay, I'll tell you this in a moment. There is one more register that I have to tell you. But before that, let us concentrate a little bit on GFEs and the related system calls. How to read time on GFEs, because this is what we have to use in our device drivers. In our device driver, we can't deal with timing with respect to seconds, microsecond, nanoseconds. Okay. So what do is we use GFEs to represent the time since the system boot. Now, to convert this time into wall clock time, I have told you that there are two type of conversion: GFEs to time spec and GFEs to time eval, which gives you time in seconds and nanoseconds and second and microseconds. Another way to obtain wall clock time is to use the system call do get time of day. You can use this system call in your device driver, which will give you time automatically converted from GFEs to time eval, means seconds and microseconds. Or you can do current kernel time, which will convert the GFEs into time in seconds and nanoseconds and return it as struct time spec. So these are the two system calls which could be used from within your device driver to automatically convert machine automatically convert time from seconds and nanoseconds, from GFEs to seconds and microseconds and nanoseconds. Okay. So this is basic introduction to GFEs and the timing mechanism that is done in your timing scale, I would say, that is used in your machine. Now, when we talk about GFE delays, I told you that it is one of the important operations inside the device driver is delaying operation and trying to sync the fast and the slow machines. So when we have to implement delay, before implementing delay, we have to understand what are the type of delays that are available. Well, basically there are two type of delays, long and short. So how do you differentiate these two? You have short, less than the GFE, less than long. So every delay that is greater than the GFE is called a long delay. Every delay that is less than a GFE is called a short delay. This is the measure. This is how you keep track of amount of time elapsed since the system boot. Okay. This is the differentiation between the long and the short. So all this, I don't want to do this. This you have already done in wait queues, timeouts. Now schedule timeout waiting for an event. Suppose you want to make your driver wait for some time. If you wanted your application to wait for some time, what did you do? Well, you implemented this sleep, or you implemented pause. But when you want to implement some kind of delay in your device driver, you will be using scheduled timeout, where you have given a unit. The unit is not seconds, because your machine does not understand seconds. every time you give second, then the machine have to do additional task of converting jiffys to seconds, nanoseconds, or seconds, microsecond. So there is always additional delay that is incurred, that is used in conversions. So we can't do that. So what do? You do this. You have to give time in jiffys. Now this is time is given in jiffys. The time is given in jiffys. Schedule timeout will give the time in jiffys. Suppose you give 10, doesn't mean 10 seconds as you see in applications. It is actually 10 jiffys. The timeout is given in jiffys. It requires the caller set the current process state. It is defined in scat.h header file. Remember this. Okay, send current task interruptible. You must do this interruptible, because if you don't do it interruptible, then the timers will not be generated, which I'll tell you in device driver when I will implement that. So when you give a schedule timeout, suppose you give some delay here. This delay will be some values, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, somewhere. Whatever value you give, this value will be in terms of jiffys. If this process may not resume immediately after the timer expires, because it will resume only when the next CPU cycle is generated and the processor is allocated by the scheduler to your process. So that happens with sleep also. That happens with almost all the sleep mechanisms. So what happens is you must use schedule timeout instead of sleep in device drivers to make your drivers slow down a bit with respect to jiffys. You get that? Sleeping is implemented or delay is implemented inside your device driver using schedule timeout, and the duration of timeout is given in jiffys. This is how timeouts are given inside your device drivers. There are another way also. You can use mSleep or mSleep interruptible or ssleep, where you can make your process sleep for milliseconds or seconds also. Okay, but these are not advisable, because again these are using wall clock time, which will ultimately convert into jiffys and calculate the duration that it needs to sleep for what duration, and then it will implement that sleeping. So that will involve more CPU cycles and more load on the machine. Even in sleeping there will be load. Okay, so avoid these. Though these you have these APIs, but avoid this. Okay, instead you must use only and only schedule timeout if you have to make your driver sleep in terms of jiffys. Okay. So this was the basic introduction to timing that you should use in your device drivers. Remember, you have to give me delays tomorrow in terms of jiffys and in terms of CPU cycles elapse. When you use delay, when you give me delay in terms of CPU cycles, you will use the timestamp counter register. When you give me delay in terms of jiffys, you have to use the jiffys keyword, which will ultimately use the jiffys underscore 64, that is counter for jiffys register, jiffys counter register, right? Now, this is how you implement things in your device driver, implement timing, delays, synchronization in your device driver. This was a very basic session. Tomorrow I'll take you another session in which will be the actual timers that we want to implement. Today was just a build up for that. Tomorrow we'll implement timers, which is a very important feature in device drivers. These timers work in a way that you invoke some task, some function or some thread. It will not start running immediately. It will run after a specified delay in duration, okay, which is one of the most important thing in device drivers and in device programming. So don't miss tomorrow's class, okay? And yes, before we start tomorrow's class, everybody please give me your observations about the delays in your device driver with respect to jiffys and with respect to CPU cycles, right? So if you have any doubts related to today's sessions, you can ask me now. Yes, Herman. This, you're talking about this? So the train of pulses that you see here, these train of pulses were generated by this CPU timing hardware. These all will be counted in a register called CPU counter register, which is named as GFEs underscore 64. These are called timer interrupts. To be more specific, these are called local timer interrupts. These are called local timer. These are called local timer interrupts. No, the count of local timer interrupts does not have any unit. These are numbers. These are just count, which counts the number of timer interrupts elapsed. The moment the system boots, okay, the timing hardware is initialized and starts giving continuous train of pulses. The primary objective of this train of pulses is: number one, setting up timing in your machine; number two, synchronize action in your machine. Suppose maybe in this what happens is sometimes it is possible that your operation started and some operation started at some other time, some operations, wait, let me start this. Some operation started at this time, suppose this time, and some other operation started at this time. So you see there is a difference in time, there is no synchronization. But if you have proper timing, then you can say that okay, both the operations will start at this time, at a given time. So you can sync the operation to happen at the synchronized time at the given time. So like all of us have decided that okay, we'll have a session today morning 8 o'clock. So we synchronized our action at 8 o'clock specific time, and we came here at the given time. So similarly, this the primary objective of this mechanism is to synchronize the action of various things inside the device driver. No. System will automatically initiate everything at the pulse. Suppose you open a file. So when does the file open? File open at a given pulse. Okay, you do read operation. Read operation happened at the next pulse. It can't happen between the two pulses. So all the actions are synchronized with respect to time, and the time is set up based on the timer interrupts in your machine. And the wall clock time that you see, hour, minute, second, that the time that is displayed right at the top, is nothing but a software inside the operating system which do the time calculation based on the timer interrupts. Fine, we go through the documents. If you'll have more doubts, we'll take up your doubts in the beginning of the next session tomorrow. Okay? Chalo, that's all I have for you today. Thank you all. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you.